the things that's changed the least is the classroom. Rows of students, teachers in the front, the students are raising hands, asking questions, and we see this sort of traditional brick and mortar classroom going on. Now, many schools have kind of converted and started to move in another direction, and we know one of the big trends that we hear when we hear digital, usually the first thing that pops into people's mind is the idea of virtual learning or virtual education. And there's been big movements in the last 10 years with virtual education. Some states, such as Florida, are requiring students to take one virtual class before they graduate, and this means outside of the classroom. So outside of the typical school day, students are taking classes online. These are things like your Florida Virtual, your K-12, where teacher and student don't necessarily interact on a day-to-day basis, but they work in an online environment, usually working off a learning management system. But really the big trend as we see the move to one-to-one is the blended learning environment, where the technology comes into the classroom, it sits with the student, with the teacher, and engagement now happens not in that brick and mortar in that sort of row section, but more personalized learning, small groups. We start to reach students more on a one-to-one. And the technology now becomes a part of the classroom. It doesn't take over for the teacher, but the teacher now, instead of being an instructor, becomes much more of a facilitator in that she works with the students, guides their learning. We get personalized learning plans. Those advanced students can really excel now, and those students that need a little more assistance, we can start to customize learning plans for them. One of the biggest trends that we see in blended learning too, which is kind of one of the newer phases, is the flipped classroom. And the idea that students can now see a teacher lecture. So what a lot of teachers are doing is they're recording their lectures, they're putting them online, and then when students go home, they're actually watching the teacher do that lecture so that when they're in the classroom is where they're actually doing the homework. So now they're working on the assignments from the lecture from what they learned,